Pole myth, shoulders back and down. What is it all about? Well, when I first started pole, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, the really common cue for shoulders was shoulders back and down. And it didn't seem to matter what you were doing or what position you were in. That was one of the really common ways instructors got their students to engage their shoulders. That, or they'd say, which is very unhelpful, they'd say, engage your shoulders. But what does that actually mean? There's a whole host of different positions that our shoulders can get into on the pole, and we're only going to look at 3 today. I do have a full-length course that is my Super Shoulders course, which is primarily a prehab and theory course. I teach you how to improve your strength, your flexibility, and the understanding of a lot of the tricks we do in pole. We look at some of the more advanced shoulder positions, like, for example, our tabletop grip, but today we're just going to look at 3 key shoulder positions. If you're interested in learning more, go check out my Patreon. I am Practical Pole, same as I am on here. Okay, so we're going to be as concise as possible. This does follow the current science. Okay, so it is up to date, it is science-based, but I'm a human being, I am always learning. So if you know something different or know something new, pop it in the comments, make sure you reference it, and I will take a look. So main 3 positions in pole we're going to look at today is straight arm, short arm, and pushing positions. Okay, so let's start with long arm. Shoulders back and down is not safe and does not work when the arms are overhead, and I'm going to demonstrate why. If you can do this along with me, that is great. If you can't, try this next time you have a pole near you or something else you can hold on to. So if we take the arm nice and high, there's a few things we want to look out for. So if we were to sink all of our weight into our shoulder, so initially so I could almost take my feet off the floor, you may not be able to do that, but as close as you can get to getting those feet off the floor. And what you're going to find is that there's no gap between your shoulder and your ear, and you're probably going to feel a stretch somewhere either deep in your shoulder, in your armpit, or maybe down the side of your body. Now this indicates your shoulder is not engaged. So if you're doing your spins and you can feel that stretch in your shoulder, then you're potentially going to hurt yourself because you're essentially hanging off your shoulder joint rather than engaging your muscles. However, the old cue of shoulders back and down doesn't necessarily put us in the best position either. So now you can do this without a pole. Take your arms overhead. Now I want you to try and force your shoulders back and down as much as you can. So when we say down, we mean away from the ear. And when we mean back, we mean like we're squeezing our shoulder blades together at the back. So just try that. Now what you're probably going to find is as your arms come lower and your shoulders come lower, your arms are going to want to start to bend, but you're also going to feel like, oh, it's a bit pinchy and a bit icky. That's because when the arms are overhead, the shoulder blade actually is supposed to sit on the side of the body. So we do want the shoulders down away from the ears, but we don't want the shoulder blades to come back together at the back. So we're not squeezing them this way because our shoulder blade wants to be here, it's supposed to be. So a way we can practice that is through shoulder engagements. So for these, we're going to start flat foot. I'm going to reach as high as we can. I'm literally getting my shoulders up by my ears and I'm putting myself into a position to hang from my shoulders. You might need to bend your legs slightly to do that. Notice how there's no gap now between my shoulder and my ears. And I can feel that little stretch in my armpit. What I'm going to do is I can come up to tippy toes. I'm not necessarily taking my feet off the floor till I'm more advanced. I'm just going to pull my shoulders away from the ears. It's a very subtle, small movement, so it should feel kind of comfortable, and we shouldn't feel like we're forcing our shoulders into a position they don't want to go. As you get more confident and more comfortable and stronger, you can start to take your feet off the floor. I do this with my students every single lesson to warm their shoulders up and remind them what I mean when I tell them to engage their shoulders. So that's arms overhead. Now let's look at short arm position. What I see a lot with short arm position is this. Shoulders up by the ears, back is kind of rounded. You can see my upper back is like making like a C shape. And we're really hugging that pole. So this is where shoulders back and down works a little bit better, but I still don't use this cue because it can cause one thing to happen. This is a new bit of information I've learned, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So very simply, when we're in a short arm position, no, we do not want our shoulders up by our ears. We want to start to pull the shoulders down away from the ears. And the easiest way to cue this with students or with yourself is to think about pulling the pole out of the ceiling. So pull the pole down as if we're ripping it out of the ceiling, and that should cause the shoulders to do that. If not, just think, right, pull the shoulders down away. We do want to start to think about our shoulders coming together at the back, but we don't want to force it. So we're not really dramatically squeezing them. Because if you look, when I really dramatically squeeze them, look what happens to my chest. Now what starts to happen is my ribs start to flare out and I'm starting to really arch. Now there's two reasons this is not good. The first is it can start to cause flared rib. I actually have a flared rib. I don't know if you can see this on camera here. This is this weird rib that kind of pokes out slightly here. Don't know how well it can be seen. This isn't from doing this, but it certainly won't have helped. And the other thing is, if we're really flaring our rib out, we're not really engaged through the top of our abs because we're now stretching those abs out as opposed to pulling them in to squeeze them. So it's not going to help you with your core strength. So hands should be about head height. Elbows want to be in towards each other and want to pull our shoulders away from our ears and start to think about pulling the pole out of the ceiling. That cue alone should be enough to get your shoulders to do what you want to. And remember not to really stick your chest out. Okay, that's our short arm position. Last one is our pushing. So I'm going to put this on static so I can see more clearly what's going on. So what a lot of people do in pole when they have to push is they kind of do this motion. But what we actually want to be doing is this motion. This is called protraction of the shoulder. You don't really need to know that. But essentially the shoulder blade, again, is starting to come around the side of the body. And this works whether the arm is overhead or sort of lower down. So one way we can practice this is through little, these are quite difficult, this is a more advanced skill. And this is why I think that most people teach split grip spins way too soon because these are hard, slightly less intense on static, but quite advanced on spin. So what we can do, we can practice not only that first movement, because we still need to have that push. There's lots of times when we're going to push in this way, but we also want to have that little extra bit of movement. So my top arm's going to be high, my index finger is down the pole on my bottom arm, and I'm going to be close enough that my arm is slightly bent. So first I need to straighten the arm, and then I'm going to push the pole all the way from the shoulder. Can you see? It's almost like if you're reaching for something in the car. The shoulder blade is coming around the side of the body, and it just gives you a much stronger, happier push. Now let me just show you, as if I was doing a split grip spin, what it looks like when it's not engaged. So this is when it's not engaged, and right now I'm very close and very wide with my arms, but usually we want to be more like this. So you can see my bottom shoulder looks all hunched up and uncomfortable. And basically, because I'm not engaging through the shoulder, a lot of the weight from my body is stacking through my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder. And it's not a very comfortable or strong position to be in. So what I'm trying to do is push all the way from the shoulder. I'm moving around a little bit too much. Let me just move to here. And it should be super, super strong. It will take a lot of the pressure out of the elbow and the wrist. So that's a very common reason why people get elbow and wrist pain in split grips, because they're not actually engaging their shoulder. We always want to work from the central muscles and joints out to the peripheral. So if you're having issues with your ankles, your knees, your wrists or your elbows, you often have to look upstream because it's the job of these bigger muscles closer to the center of the body to protect the outer ones. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. There is so much more to this. Like I said at the beginning, I have a whole course that goes really into depth. We look at lots of different exercises, both on and off the pole, lots of mobility exercises, strengthening exercises, and I actually talk you through a lot of pole tricks and common shoulder positions so we can understand what is going on in those positions. I really hope that makes sense, Any questions, pop them in the comments. Any extra info you think you've got and want to add, also throw it in the comments. And as always, don't forget to train smarter, not harder.